This is a Danger Entertainment podcast. DangerEntertainment.net. Danger Entertainment Podcast Network.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. And life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen. I am your hostess for the evening tonight. And with me we have Brian and, oh no, Hanno. Wah, wah. Something about having to work because he was all on vacation. And yeah, we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
So we miss you, Hanno. Can't wait to talk to you and hear from you soon and hear all of your fun adventures.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait for next week.
Yep.
So how are you, Brian? How's things going?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm still dealing with my stupid sinus headaches because our weather's funky. You know, like it's barely 70 today, and it's supposed to be like 90 in 2 days. Or no, tomorrow. It's
off
tomorrow,
and on
I
rain,
think.
and then sun.
Yeah,
and
humid and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been fun, but you know, whatever. No different than it's been for a long time of my life. So
pretty much.
yeah, although you know my sleep's getting really mangled the last couple nights because they tore up the roads around where we live, and the notice said that they were gonna have like the paving done today so that by tomorrow you could drive on it. But I woke up today and I looked outside and they're a long way from paving still. I'm like, this looks more like it might not be a couple days until they're all done. And yeah, so I've got a therapy appointment scheduled tomorrow that I don't think I'm going to be able to go to because I don't think we're going to be able to leave the house because they've got us pinned in basically.
MacGyver it.
Yeah.
There's got to be some sort of cord going into your house that you could just, arrange a little hang glider thing,
right,
and then like zoom across.
Well, if I call, I might be able to. If I want to, I could probably switch it to telehealth. So I might.
I would recommend doing that instead of skipping.
Yeah, for sure. Because like if I go to reschedule it, it's going to be a long time because they're so, like my therapist told me that their requests have gone up like threefold since COVID, and it's just, so it's hard to, it's not like it used to be to where I could reschedule and usually within a few weeks I'd get an appointment. Now you might be looking at 2 months out, it sucks, but what can you do when there's not enough people, it's weird. I was reading, and it's an old issue of Men's Health, but one I hadn't read yet. And in the back of the issue, they always have where they rank cities based on, just whatever the topic is for that month. And the one I happened to read, it was best and worst cities for mental health. And, Toledo ranked out of 100, Toledo ranked 99. So, I was like, all right, like
we made the list.
And a lot of it's based on people in need versus available help.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is there's just not enough people to help. And I've had a lot of friends that have wanted to go for therapy have, like, when they go to schedule and it's like 4 months out or 3 months out, and they're, you know, and I'm like, oh man, like, this sucks, because a lot of people will be like, well, I'm not going to bother, you know, and, but there's nothing they can do aside from, you know, if they use one of the, like, you know, their apps and stuff out there now, which, I had no idea. I listened to a podcast the other day. A guy was talking about how there was some kind of sketchy behavior with some of those type of things about, like, what they do with the data that you, like, if you text with them, like, what happens to that data and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, the cyber expert he talked to still was like, look, if you need help, it's still better than nothing. But, you know, because I guess one of them, it was they had where the service is free, but that company still, they had another wing of their company that basically sold data to pay for offering the other service for free.
Gotcha.
And like they always say, you know, if there's no product, you're the product, basically, you know. And that's what it becomes is, you know, any app, no matter what it's for, if it's free, you're the product, you know. So, you know, it was a little scary, because it's like, I've recommended some of these things to people in the past and everything. So, you know, and I still will, because if you need help, it's better than not getting help, you know. But, yeah, if you can get in-person help, that's for sure the best thing. But, yeah, but telehealth and stuff is a little different. It's weird, though, because I never get as much out of telehealth. It just doesn't feel the same, you know. But like this, I'm not going to have an option. We're not going to be able to leave. So, you know, it's either that or I just flat out cancel, and I'd rather not do that, you know. So I think that's probably what I'll do, is I'll just get up tomorrow morning and, you know, see if I can do that. So, because the time's already blocked, so I can't imagine it'll be a problem.
Right.
And we can just do it on the phone.
Good choice.
Yeah, I don't care about it being like on Skype. I can just do it on the phone. That's fine. Well, they don't use Skype. They use a more secure version of Skype.
Yeah. So, my psychiatrist used to do that too.
Yeah. So, which I like. There's a lot of appointments that I really feel like should be that way now. You know, like if they don't need to lay hands on you, basically, they should be able to just do telehealth, so people don't have to bother sitting in a waiting room and all this kind of stuff. Because, you know me, like, I hate sitting in the waiting rooms of places because there's always sick people around.
Yeah.
Like, mine is at my doctor's office, so there's literally people hacking and sneezing and all this around me, and I'm like, the whole time. Like, I don't want to be around sick people.
You've got cooties.
Yeah. Well, it's like they have a little kid area up here that's further away from it. And they've got a little table and stuff for kids to whatever. So a lot of times, and they have full-on adult chairs in there too. I'll go sit in that area because I'm by myself, and it's right by the door for where the mental health wing is. So, you know, I'll do that because it's like, I don't want to sit over by all the sick people.
Yeah.
It's like when, you know, I was in the hospital with my mom for, you know, when Jim went in there, you know, and I'm just sitting in there, and it was going to be a while. And I'm like, do you mind if I call and get somebody to take me home? Because literally I've seen 2 or 3 people come in here with, like, knowingly having COVID, and I'd really like to not be around that. You know? So, and I admit, you know, like, I know I'm paranoid about it too, but, you know, that's also kind of helped keep me from getting sick at times too, you know.
For sure.
So I'm okay with it. But yeah, other than that kind of stuff, you know, it's been a pretty boring week. I haven't really done much because this with the road it's kept us here. This is what, day 3 now, I think, or day 2, where they've had it all torn up. I mean, we can drive on it right now, but like to drive out of your driveway, there's almost like a foot drop off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, you know, my mom's car doesn't set that high up. So, you know, going to get into the driveway, it's almost going to be impossible to not bottom out, basically. Like if she had a big truck, like, you know, our neighbor, he's got a pickup truck. So, you know, he's in and out of there. No big deal because it sets up high enough. He's not, you know, he's not going to scrape. Or like our neighbor across the street, she's got a car that sits like yours does. And she's like, I can't even get in my driveway. And we're like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Like, you can't, you know, we don't have any control over it.
When your driveway is the same height as your bumper, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. The weird part is I didn't notice that the road really needed fixing. Like there aren't like giant potholes. There's no real, I don't know what the need for it really is, but you know, whatever. Guess I can't complain. When it's done, it'll be nice, you know? So.
True.
But yeah. So yeah, that's been about it for me though. I haven't really, you know, other than, you know, us hanging out last week, which was a good time, you know, that was
fun.
You know, it was, you know, and that's been about it. Honestly, that was, I think, the last time I went out for a doctor's appointment, but other than that, that's basically all I've been out.
Right. Yeah, it was a good week. It was interesting. Try to think. Life is going at a very, very fast pace for me right now.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for me to remember the order of things.
It doesn't help that, like, when you don't do the show weekly, it's also kind of hard to put things in order. Tony and I found that out too. Like, even if we get to 10 days between doing shows, it starts going, did I talk about this last week? You know, like, yeah.
Exactly. But I do have a new psychiatrist. I was able to find someone who takes my insurance. So I had to do the intake and all that other stuff, which is so much fun because it's the exact same questions, but you have to repeat it like 3 times over to different people.
Yep.
But
I assume I'm going to have to go through that when I find, you know, one to talk to about the ADHD testing.
Yeah. So it's just, you know, is what has to happen.
Yeah.
So, and they were able to get me in 2 weeks to see a psychiatrist.
Oh, that's actually pretty fast.
I know.
Good.
I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
They pretty much got me all set within a month.
Oh, wow. That's really fast because well, maybe it's because it's a psychiatrist, not a psychologist.
A therapist.
Yeah. Because psychiatrists are pretty boom out the door usually, so they keep a pretty tight ship. Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, because they have other options, like other services that I could work with.
Yeah.
But that's the only one I really need right now.
Right.
Is that I need help getting my meds worked out.
And it could be that they prioritized you a little bit because you need help with medicine, you know?
Could be.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay. And I had a pick of times, too, which was really interesting.
Oh, wow.
I was like, all right. But yeah, so it should be good. I'm looking forward to having a different set of eyes on my diagnosis as well as my my care as far, you know, my medicine that I'm on.
Right.
There's some I cannot be on, like Abilify. I am not allowed to take Abilify.
Okay.
And lithium is not good for me, and Prozac doesn't really work for me. So kind of limits things down a bit. So we'll see.
Yeah.
See how that goes. But yeah, so that's coming together, which is a good thing. And work is still progressing. I am in the interview process for a fairly significant jump up role. So I apologize, folks. I don't know why I keep yawning. But so yeah, I finished my 3rd interview for this. So now the next stage is they've got to make a decision. So I'm curious, and I'm waiting for that decision probably in the next day or 2, hopefully.
Yeah.
They'll be letting me know. So that's that, and that's that. And I'm hanging in there. It's weird. My mental health, everything is very weird right now. But as my mental health has been, I've actually been incredibly depressed, which is very unusual for me. Usually I'm more manic than I ever get depressed.
Right.
But yeah, I've been really, really depressed over the last week, and it's only been the last couple days that I've been feeling better. So I don't know whether I had a flu type thing or just life catching up to me, which is probably more than anything.
Yeah.
Just a lot of life curves this last month or two.
Yeah.
So. But other than that, watching Miss Maisel and just enjoying trying to figure myself out. Which is always fun and interesting game.
Yeah.
Like, who am I? I wish we had, one of those actual games like Guess Who, where you could just like flip down, like, oh, not that person.
Right.
Oh, nope, not that person.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It just isn't as clean and pretty as the game.
Exactly.
Because it is,
Yeah. Give it a try. This works. Give it a try. This doesn't work.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm 43 years old, and I am learning who I am, which is kind of figured a little late in life for that, but hey, who knows, right?
Yeah. I hear you. That's same with me.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's really interesting because for those of you who don't know, I'm in the process of getting a divorce right now, and I have dipped my toe into the dating world, which, again, as crazy and weird as my life is being right now, it just adds a whole nother level of crazy and weird.
Yeah.
But it's it's just there's so many different people, and it's just odd because then they're asking you questions that you can't answer, like, what do you like to do?
Right.
Seems like an innocuous, very easy question, but at this point in my life, I'm like, I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting thing because, especially as you emerge from a relationship, what you like to do kind of changes when it's only you have to consider, essentially.
Yeah.
Because when there's somebody else, it's like, well, we like to do this, but I don't necessarily love it, but I do enjoy it, but I'm doing it mainly because they like to do it, or, and then you're on your own. You're like, oh, I don't have to do these things anymore if I don't want to. Or you just, like my mom's going through, where she's trying to figure out what she wants to do because she's in the same kind of boat you are in that she's trying to figure out what does she want to do for hobbies or just to pass the time or to give her purpose or whatever it ends up being, and it's interesting how we really can hit this at any era kind of our life because, you can come out of college and it's not even a relationship. It's like you can come out of college and be like, I've put my face into books for 4 years or 2 years or whatever it is, 7 years, and it's like, I don't know what I like to do anymore,
Yeah.
So like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to, so it's interesting, but coming out of relationships, especially because you're finding your own identity again, or parents,
you're no longer a piece of a couple,
right?
You're a single.
Yeah. Or people with kids, when the kids move out, and it's like, what do we want to do with ourselves now? We don't have, band practice and this and this and this. And, it's like, we have free time now.
Yeah. It's just, it's really, really crazy. Yeah. And
well, like I saw my social worker last week or whatever, and she asked me what a normal day, what I want a normal day for me to look like. And I'm like, I don't even know. It's been so long since I could just like get up and do, that I don't even know what I want from life. I don't know where I want to point myself. Like if I could get back to working, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what, I have no idea. I'm so lost, because I've been down this pit for so long, So, she wants me to try to think about that more and all this. And as I've thought about it, it's like, I can't come up with an answer. Like, I really don't have, I didn't realize as much as I feel I have an identity, also how much I've lost in the years, to where I'm like, I don't even know anymore. Like, I don't know what I would want to do. I don't know where I want to point myself. That's scary, especially at our age or, somebody older. I'm sure, if you were 60 and had the same thoughts, that's got to be terrifying, Like,
I mean, people who retire, they face it too.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're right. It's like any significant change in life, and you have to like reevaluate and and it's, everybody has their own judgments. I strive to be as non-judgmental as possible, but I know others aren't that same way. As one of my friends told me, I'm like, yeah, I saw someone and he's a little bit less liberal than I am. And my friend started laughing and he's like, I don't think they come any more liberal than you, at least socially. And I said, yeah, that's probably true. He's like, I think you're the most socially liberal person I've ever met. I said, yeah, I guess by definition, everyone's going to be a little bit more socially conservative than me, huh? And he's like, yeah, I would think so. I'm like, yeah, what can I say? I try very, very, very hard not to judge and just accept people for who they are. Yeah. And as long as they're not doing anything that's illegal or negatively hurting another human being or myself, then enjoy, have fun, do you.
We've said on here before, it's like you try to not yuck anyone's yum as long as everybody's, consensual in these things. And, like you said, it's not illegal or harming somebody. It's,
Yeah,
have at it.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Life's too short.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
I got my own stuff to worry about. I ain't got time to worry about what somebody else is doing too, like.
Exactly.
I got enough on my plate.
Yeah. Exactly. And I know we do not want to get religious or political on this show, but pretty much anything that you choose to believe, as far as a religion, they all have the same basic rule, quote unquote, which is we don't judge here.
Yeah.
They judge there,
Yeah.
Wherever your higher power would be, they're the ones that are supposed to do the judging. We're supposed to do the living and accepting and loving and taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And anything that needs to happen will happen later with them, not having to happen here with me. So,
yeah.
Basically, they all in a nutshell say, mind your own damn business.
Yeah. That's my feeling on it. It's so much easier. A lot less stressful when you stop trying to control other people,
Oh, no kidding. So that kind of, brings you up to speed on what's going on with me. What's our article for today, sir?
All right. Well, before we get into this, like it's going to talk about a little bit in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial that's going on. And we're not going to get into the ins and outs of that. I have no interest in that. But what this is about is that there's been a lot of talk in this trial about borderline personality disorder, or BPD, as you've heard. Or no, I'm sorry, not BPD. Yeah, BPD. Jeez. I'm thinking bipolar disorder, but BPD is usually for borderline personality disorder.
Correct.
But there's been a lot in there. And of course, when especially the internet gets a hold of stuff like this with mental health, as we've talked about on here before, like choosing what you say carefully, because you could be harmful to someone else, and it also minimizes what people who are suffering go through. And I also kind of wanted to piggyback this a little bit with, and again, I'm not going to get into the circumstances or whatever, but the recent shooting in Buffalo, and that there's been a bunch of people trying to pin that guy's stuff on mental illness, even though he's not been diagnosed with anything. And I just can't implore people enough to please be careful with that stuff, because for those of us who are fighting these things and suffering from these things, you really are minimizing all of us by trying to pin something that has nothing to do with it on the mental health thing. Because then when people hear, oh, well, so-and-so has depression, and if they shot somebody else, it's like, oh, well, you have depression, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to go shoot anybody. Like, I'm not, I don't have those thoughts, so please don't jump to conclusions from one of these things directly to another. That's the preface I want to put on all this.
And one more thing before you continue.
Yeah.
I did want to make a very big distinction. Schizophrenia and separate personalities do not coincide necessarily with with what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So again, as I've mentioned plenty of times before, a lot of the stuff we throw out is to throw it at a wall to help people learn a little bit about something. So please, if you're curious about borderline personality disorder or any mental illness, please research it and look for sites that, like the Mayo Clinic and stuff, where they'll give you this is the kind of stuff, and, so that you can at least have a base understanding of it. And please don't, like we've said before, please don't say, oh, I'm so bipolar, just because you get mad easily, because that isn't necessarily how it manifests for everyone. And, and again, also, if you haven't been diagnosed, please be careful throwing these kind of terms around.
Yep.
So,
don't self-diagnose.
Yes.
Let the professionals take care of that.
Yes.
Your job is to know when something's not right with you.
Yeah. Well,
and
heck,
to know your body.
Look at like me with this ADHD thing. I read something that really stood out to me as like, oh, this sounds like me. I looked into it a little more, found even more that sounds like me. Went through an online kind of primer test. Still found that a lot of it sounds like me. And now I still have to go see a psychiatrist for another test before I can get a diagnosis. So, and it's, so yeah, I could have just from the beginning go, oh yeah, I have this, and just kind of started planning my life accordingly, but maybe I don't. Maybe I just have leanings or whatever. So that's what the expert is there for. So yeah. Anyway, so, where is it? I'm going to read part of this, but it's more like the talking points lower that I want to get into. But it says, like many people, Bethany Purves, 23-year-old writer in England, had been idly watching the Johnny Depp's defamation case against his ex-wife Amber Heard. At least she was up to a point. Eventually, she had to turn it off. It was upsetting to hear the intimate accounts of the couple's relationship, and they both claimed that they were physically and emotionally abusive. Even if you aren't looking for clips on YouTube or watching it, it's hard to escape the trial online. The case is sensitive, nuanced, and centered on serious claims of domestic abuse and violence. But on Twitter and TikTok, it's been reduced to a viral sideshow. On both platforms, Depp supporters and casual viewers of the trial have used excerpts from Heard's testimony to mock her through memes and lip-sync videos. Purves panicked when she read in a tweet that Depp's legal team had brought in a forensic psychologist who claimed that Heard had BPD. She said she was like, oh no, I know what many people think of Heard, and BPD is already a very misunderstood and highly stigmatized condition. I knew the combination would result in BPD and abuse being linked, since this is the first time a lot of people have heard about BPD.
Yeah.
which is true. Like, she mentions that, you know, like, there's been a lot more understanding of it recently, but there's still, most people do not understand a lot of it. And that's why there's actually, I remember a while ago talking about this, that there's psychiatrists and psychologists out there that have been kind of pushing for renaming things because the stigma of the old names and stuff is so bad that it also doesn't necessarily encompass what people are talking about. So it says, if you have BPD, you tend to see the world in extremes, such as all good or all bad. This can create chaos in personal relationships as the intimate partner or the person with BPD oscillates from being good to bad, from savior to hater. People with BPD usually experience fears of abandonment in their relationships and worry about others abandoning them, even with no objective evidence to support it. This kind of frantic, impulsive behavior tends to push others away and lead to fractured relationships. Generally, people with BPD have chronic feelings of emptiness, tend to be impulsive, and are at risk for other conditions like mood disorders. People with BPD also have a hard time regulating their emotions, and it's said that living with BPD is like existing with no emotional skin.
I can see that.
So, but it says, it's the negative side of BPD that gets the most attention on social media. You don't have to poke around Twitter very long to find tweets characterizing Heard and others with BPD as toxic, manipulative, or abusive. One YouTube video goes as far as suggesting that because Heard allegedly has BPD, she's not even fit to be a mom. Pervs and others with the condition say it's disheartening to see BPD equated with violent behavior. I definitely worry that BPD will become a phrase that is used to describe violent people because it's just not true, she told Huffington Post, especially since violence associated with BPD is far more likely to occur in the form of self-harm, not violence against others. And, you know, and again, that's the kind of stuff we talk about on here, is even though it can happen, it's not the norm for the kind of condition. So immediately linking stuff with that. That's why, like, I mentioned that shooter in Buffalo it's the same kind of thing. If people start linking mental health or mental illness to, all these shooters are mentally ill, then that can also, by proxy, like, stigmatize a lot of the rest of us who would never go into a place and shoot things up. And he didn't, you know, you can look at this kid and tell he's got a lot wrong with him, but I don't know that it's, you know, I don't know that it's necessarily mental illness. So again, always be careful with these leaps that media likes to make.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm kind of, was it Maddie Faith, a 34-year-old from England, was also so taken aback by the intensity of social media posts about Heard and her alleged diagnosis, she decided to tweet about it. She said, "Reminder, Amber Heard won't see your post villainizing people who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder as abusive, manipulative, violent, attention-seeking, toxic monsters. Yet your friends with BPD will." Which is also so very, very true. Like, you know, these celebrities that you talk about, or people talk about on social media, generally are not going to see your posts, but your friends will. And if any of your friends have some of these things that you're naive, or, you know, just naively throwing insults about, you know, you don't realize you might be insulting someone that you know and love. But, you know, the point, like she said, the point of the testimony in the case was to create a link between mental health and dangerous behavior, which is such a damaging connection to be reinforcing, when it's actually people suffering from mental illness that are far more vulnerable to violence, not violent themselves. And, you know, another person said that she gets, or that most people on TV, if they have BPD, they're shown as crazy. You know, which is very true. And again, this is what, like, I listened to a podcast with psychiatrists talking about that, about how damaging that can be to people with it. And then when you find out someone you know has BPD, the first thing you think of is some crazy TV character that had BPD. And it's like, yeah, that's a TV character, like, so, like I said, I'm kind of skipping around in here. If anyone wants to read this, I'll have the link in the show notes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it says how to manage your feelings if you have BPD and are unsettled by the trial. Therapists they spoke to suggested the following ways to cope. 1, remind yourself that this trial is not about you. If you start to get fixated on what's happening, remember, this is a defamation trial involving messy fallout from a divorce case that you ultimately have nothing to do with. I'd suggest to anyone who is upset by news about her and BPD to remember that in a divorce situation or a lawsuit, each side may make all kinds of accusations against the other, Cohen said. This can be a helpful moment for individuals with BPD to reframe their thinking if they are feeling personally targeted. This case is really about Heard and Depp's relationship, not BPD, which is very important to remember.
And that's something that I think so important to just apply across the board. I mean, as you were mentioning, the gentleman in Buffalo, and then there was somebody else in California.
Yeah.
Mental illness affects your life, yes. Can affect some of your decisions, yes. Does it make you do things that you cannot control and you have no free will? No.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, that you have no free will to make your mind up to do things, then there's other things going on there other than just the basic mental health situations. So, like you were saying earlier, I've got bipolar. I manage my bipolar fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I make choices that are not the best because the bipolar has taken control in some ways. Yes. But I still made those decisions.
Yeah.
I still had the thought in my head, I know this is wrong, but I need to do it anyways.
Yeah. Well, I heard Howie Mandel talk about on a podcast, he was talking about his OCD. And he talks about how, like, when he was leaving his house one day, he had to lock and unlock his door a bunch of times. And it wasn't a set number. It was just he kept having this, well, I'm not sure if it locked all the way kind of mentality. And he's like, in my head, I know it's locked. And he's like, but I can't just walk away from that point, And he's like, logically, I know, it's like when I talk to people about like my phobia of driving, it's like, I know I would probably be a fine driver. I know I would understand things differently if I'm in the driver's seat, all these kind of things. But it's like, that's what makes it a phobia, is it's not rational. If it was rational, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I'd be able to logic it out and go, okay, whatever, and I'd get past it. But the fact that once it crosses that line into irrational is where, that's where it starts influencing your thought process, which, if you're making decisions based on flawed logic, that's where these things can have issues with you,
Absolutely. And that's why when push comes to shove, everybody who does an extreme thing, like, the people and the kids that have done the shootings, the mass shootings and stuff, there is so many hurdles they have in bad decisions they have to make to get to that point that it's almost absurd.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me that at no point whatsoever it didn't cross their minds that this is wrong and they chose to do it anyways.
Yeah.
I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like I said, there are some things and choices that I make that may have made and probably will make in the future that the bipolar has had a part in.
Right. Because like I just said, it changes, it can change what you see as logical, and then you go, oh, well, this won't be so bad, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, it does play a role. I'm not trying to deny that at all.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you are responsible for your actions.
Yeah. Many times the mental illness is not the root cause. It can be a contributor or a factor, but it's generally not. Just because you have mental illness does not mean you're going to be violent in some other way. You know, unless there are some mental illnesses that do have, some violent tendencies in them and whatever, but that still doesn't mean you will be that way, So it's not right to blanket people with these things.
Just like my baby pitties, my little pit bulls.
Yeah.
It is, they are who they are, but
yeah,
it's not, every pit bull is not the same. Every pit bull is not aggressive. Every pit bull, yes, they do have very strong jaws.
Yeah.
Every pit bull is going to have an incredibly strong jaw.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But my babies have absolutely never bit or shown any sort of aggression unless it had a squeaky in it. Now, if you walk into my house and squeak like a squeak toy, I'm not guaranteeing that you will not be attacked.
Right.
But as long as you don't come into my house going quick, 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 you should be fine.
Right. So the next thing on here, which this is just good life advice anyway, which is take a breather from social media or curate your feed so the trial isn't everywhere you look. And
amen.
I've been doing this more with Twitter off and on, to where there's just things where people just are obsessing on something, and I just have started muting words. And, people will work around them with some stuff, but it'll still filter out a lot of it. And this is one of those things that, even though it involves very serious subject matter of domestic violence and potentially, BPD and other abuses and stuff, if it does not affect almost any of our lives as far as this trial. Now, those things involved in the trial, yes, those things may, affect your life, but also it is something you can turn off and it's okay. You don't have to pay attention to this, so never forget those kind of things too, that if something feels too heavy for you, turn it off for a little bit, because again, if it's in your own life, that's a little different. It's hard to, hey, work's heavy, I'm just going to, ignore work for a week. You can't quite do that, but, you can, if the war in Ukraine is too much for you, you can maybe not get updates every day from it, Same with this, or take your pick, whatever else it is in the world. If something, COVID updates, whatever it is, if it's too heavy for you, you can kind of turn it off and walk away for a little bit. And I know it's hard to do, especially in social media, because everyone wants to throw everything into your face. That's the whole, but curating your social media a little differently, or, as this says, just, limit your time on there. But if people that you follow keep posting things that are triggering you or bothering you, unfollow them. Mute them, whatever you got to do. I've muted people, like I went through and muted people when the whole, like, Elon Musk was, first talking about taking over Twitter, because everybody and their mother on Twitter had to have some take about it. And I was just tired of it. So honestly, I was off Twitter for about 2 days during that time. And then when I came back, I started muting things because I just was tired of it. It's like everyone's saying the same thing. It's like, and he's not reading most of it, so it's like, you're not making any real difference here. So quit getting so worked up over it.
I tell that to my dad all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, how does this directly affect your life?
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't like that policy as a blanket policy, because I don't want people to become cold or not pay attention to the plight of others. But at the same time, it's some of us take everything we read and we pull it into ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're that kind of person, for your own self-care, once in a while, find a game you like to play on your phone instead. And instead of scrolling Twitter, jump on there instead. Like, that's what I've started doing at night. I used to scroll Twitter until I would fall asleep. And now I have a couple word games that I play instead, because nothing's going to get me riled up. There's not going to be any hot takes that someone just has to make. You know, like, there's none of that stuff. It's just finding words and spelling words, you know, and it exhausts my brain, and then I can go to sleep. So, like, in this article, actually, it says, but it points out, you know, if YouTube is wall-to-wall coverage of the trial because you watched a clip or two and now the algorithm thinks you're interested, remove individual videos from your watch history. Which, again, that's great advice for anybody if you keep getting things that is basically you're doom scrolling and you're staying in that pit of, you know, despair, essentially, is remove that stuff from your YouTube. Eventually the algorithm will shift. You know, it's why I try to be really careful what I watch on different stuff, because I don't want these dang algorithms to start going, oh, you like this? And I'm going to just give you a constant feed of something that maybe I only wanted to read that and I have no interest in this otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
They mentioned basically doing the same thing on Twitter, you know, mute phrases and names you don't want to see on your feed. There's a helpful guide in the article here, or a link to one. And you can block specific videos and keep your feed customized on TikTok, apparently. I wouldn't know because I'm not on TikTok. But, and then the next part is, you know, or take a break from social media entirely. You know, which really is a good thing to do anyway, is find some time, especially if it's like during, like, air quote, normal hours, try to find something social to do instead. Go have dinner with a friend, join a book club, you know, something more like, you know, take your dog for a walk at the park. Find something that puts you back into actual contact with people or takes you away from your phone for a little bit.
Yes.
You know, so that you can walk away from that, you know. And another thing they don't mention here, but it's just one, which is, you know, limit the amount of time that you're reading about something like this, you know, because I know people they start watching videos on, you know, recaps from this case, and they're like hours later, they're still watching this. And it's like, what are you doing? You know, like this is no good for you, you know? I guess it's easier for me to say, because I've never been a, like, ooh, celebrity car, you know, train wreck, I got to watch this. I'm not that person at all. I really don't care about celebrities, but, you know, yeah. So, and this next part here says, remember, people with BPD are not broken. This life coach said she reached out to a YouTuber and asked him to reconsider his thumbnail for his video, which read Amber Heard diagnosed as crazy in a big font. Exactly, because, you know, having BPD does not mean you're crazy.
No.
You know? And,
means you have a chemical imbalance in your brain that needs to be treated like any other ailment.
Yeah, well, it's like this woman here. It says people with BPD are not broken. They just have what psychologist Marsha Linehan calls a skills deficit. And she apparently is the creator of dialectical behavioral therapy, a type of therapy that can be very effective for reducing or managing symptoms of BPD. And apparently it's considered as a gold standard in BPD treatment. She says people with BPD are not crazy. They just never learn the skills needed to effectively feel, process, and manage their emotions, which they often experience more intensely than other people. If you're bothered by this trial, remind yourself of that. And then the last one on here, of course, is, you know, consider talking to a mental health professional. It's important that people with BPD have access to compassionate care to learn how to regulate and manage intense emotions when they come up. Of course, therapy can be pricey, even if you have insurance, and there's a link in here to where there's some options for cutting costs and whatever. So, you know, that's basically the article here.
In a nutshell? Cool.
Yeah. And like I said, going into it, this is not us like one way endorsing either person in this trial. I have no dog in the fight. I don't,
Me neither. It's a sad situation all the way around.
Right. I wanted to like peel the celebrity part back and folk, like I like the parts where it talks about, not allowing terms like that one we just talked about, where it's like, so-and-so diagnosed as crazy. And it's like, they're not crazy. They just have, it's no different than if you're diagnosed with arthritis,
Right.
It's just something, okay, this is something different. This is something I have to medicate, get therapy, both, whatever the treatments are for whatever it is. It's just something I need to, a person needs to deal with. It doesn't mean that they're less of a person. It doesn't mean that they're dangerous necessarily and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, and realistically, those stigmas are what make a lot of people dangerous, because when people get diagnosed and they know those stigmas are out there, a lot of times they're not going to want to talk about it. They're not going to maybe want to get help. And this is what can make people a little more dangerous to themselves or others, depending on their, whatever their diagnosis is. The thing that hurts people, like if it's, going to like suicidal types, it's like the thing that hurts a lot of people that are suicidal, that have suicidal thoughts, is that they don't talk about having those thoughts and realize that a lot of us have those thoughts, and that much like in meditation and such, you learn to let the thought come, let the thought go, and if you can do that, it's okay that you have these thoughts. And it doesn't mean you're going to harm somebody else, but telling somebody to bury it, not talk about it, keep it to themselves, that allows it to fester in their head. And keeping that thought to themselves is where it gets dangerous. So please don't be one of those people that, calls people that have mental illnesses crazy, or minimize, what they go through and such. And if you know somebody who does that, then, call them out on it. I'm tired of all of us having to, play nice while other people just dump all over things that are wrong with us. But if we had a bad knee, they'd be okay with it. It's garbage. It's part of our overall health. So, be kind while doing it, but call them out on it.
That sounds like a good plan.
So yeah, that's it, I guess.
No, that was a really good article and made some really amazing points, and a lot of things to think about. It's always sad to see two people that are hurting as much as Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but I mean, ultimately, like, the article is 100% right. Is that did her diagnosis play a role? Probably. Did it make her do the things she did? No. Yeah. And however it's going to go, it's going to go. But that's, I think, the main thing to take away from this is that just like arthritis can make you slower when you walk, it's not going to stop you from walking for the most part. I mean, obviously extreme cases, but you can still walk. You're just going to walk slower. Just like with, any mental health issues that you have. It's just going to be different. Doesn't mean you can't do what you're going to do and make good choices.
Yeah,
so
you just have to learn how to navigate it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, and I'll start doing the wrap up here, folks. That's why it's so important to ask for help. If you need help, get it. And Brian will give you some links coming up and some places to go to get that. But if you would like to continue the conversation with us, and we know you do, there's all sorts of craziness going on in this world right now, and we would love to talk to you about it. You can reach us at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com is our website. thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com is our email address. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can go to our Facebook page and send me a message through Facebook Messenger. I am on that page, so you should be able to find me. And you could also address an email and just put Jen on the top. I'll know who you're talking about. And it'll get right to me. I promise. And Brian, how could they find you?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Stunami. You can find my other podcast at salty_language on Twitter. You can, or at saltylanguage.com. The show's not safe for work, and it's just me and my best friend talking about kind of whatever, ever jumps out to us. Like this week we talked about, James Hetfield of Metallica actually broke down before a concert talking about how he had doubts that he could still, play guitar at the level he, used to. And
wow.
yeah, we talked about a possible Married with Children animated series, like reboot, a Spinal Tap sequel, the new Kendrick Lamar album, the She-Hulk trailer, just kind of, mostly pop culture stuff this week, but whatever jumps out at us. So if you're into that, please give us a listen. And again, remember, not safe for work. So be careful of that. If you want to find Heno, you can find him on Twitter at IdaHeno. His other podcast, Moving the Needle, can be found at MTN Pod on Twitter. And they just, I just had it up here. There it is. Their most recent episode, I believe. Wow, that seems like a while ago. Okay, maybe they haven't put a new episode up in a little bit. The most recent one that it shows on the Twitter feed is Piranha versus Orca, where they watch those two movies and compare the two. So, again, if you're into that, please go check them out. And, if you look through their archives, if you look through their archives, I think they'll only show me once because I think they took the other feed down. But I've been on there a couple of times. If you want to find the show on Facebook, as Jen mentioned, you can find us at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. And if you want to find us on Twitter, where I post when new episodes go up, you can find that at The Crazy Life Pod. And I believe that's all the links there, except for we're also part of the Tangentbound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check out other shows there. And as Jen mentioned, I've got different links in the show notes, like the Suicide Prevention Hotline, the Crisis Text Line, coda.org if you're looking for some help with codependency, Gamblers Anonymous, but if you need help, as Jen mentioned, please reach out. There's all sorts of people out there willing to help you. It may take a little time. It may not be the easiest process, but please still reach out. We've all three of us that are on the show have done it, and it's not easy. We understand, and we're here for you. So if you just need a shoulder, like Jen said, reach out to any one of us and would talk to you also. As long as you remember, of course, we're not doctors or trained professionals or therapists or any of that, So yeah. And then of course, please reach out to friends and, see how they're doing, make sure everything's going okay if you can, if you're in that mental space. And of course, as always, I ask everyone to please be kind to one another. Please show empathy to your fellow humans and, just listen. There's so much talking right now and not anywhere near enough listening. I posted a tweet the other day because I keep seeing people talking about First Amendment and all this. And it's like, yeah, you also have the right to just shut up and listen once in a while. Let's do more of that for a little bit and listen to the people who are hurting and struggling. And let's see what we can do to try to be kind to those people and try to help. And now I'll step off my soapbox.
No, that's a huge, 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 huge lesson that we all could take a class in, which is listening.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you for listening to us. We appreciate it. And go out there and have the absolute best week you possibly can. And don't forget, make sure you're wiggling those toes.